Is it tricky?
I don't know if it's a tricky, but
Did
it's,
Star Trek reference?
yeah.
I'll look for
I brought mine.
Sweet.
It's after 2 o'clock. Let's get started. We'll probably have some other people drift in like we always do, but we've got a lot to cover. Don has asked that I do all the talking because he's tired, fed up with it all. So I think he's going to go sitting out in the audience and come up during citizen comment, give us a piece of his mind.
That's how rumors get started, Bob.
Apparently, the audience is sick of it. What happened when I was gone? Over spring break, a number of us weren't here, and before we left, the audience was filled to the brim in here. And now,
Oh, we had more people, more members attend during spring break than we have today.
really,
And we adopted a whole bunch of projects, so I think there was a correlation.
hopefully, they're all assigned to those of us who are absent.
If we bog down today, we're going to know why.
Could I see the minutes, please? I wasn't here. That's all.
Okay. Opening remarks from me will be an early warning that this is the third meeting of March. That means next Tuesday is the first meeting of April. Keep it in mind. We got first and third weeks of every month. So next Tuesday, we got to see everybody here again. That's the biggest thing on my list to say. Anybody on the committee have anything they want to share? Don?
Let's keep moving. Only thing I have is if you want to comment on the Rural Transportation Improvement Plan, the RTIP, you have until April the 7th, which is next week.
Anybody on this side? Okay. Item 2 is to consider approval of the minutes of March 1st and March 15th.
We don't have 15.
Okay, we don't have the 15th. So, any motion to approve minutes?
Second.
Second by Bobby Bally. He beat to it. Any objections? Okay, the minutes are accepted. Item 3 on the agenda is the initial public comment period. We'll have another one at the end. Anybody care to speak?
Good article, man.
Really? Okay. Move on. Anybody that has their schedule, take a quick look at it. March 29th, we had informally indicated that we would be through with short-term recommendations for automobile projects and for pedestrian, bicycle, and other transit projects, and that we would begin looking at the long-term. Clearly, we're just proceeding with a mixture of both. And based on the progress that we had, honestly speaking, last meeting, of going through these and the committee actually taking formal action,
Those are extras.
I think we've got a good path forward if we just keep it up. And like John Kite said, let's just keep going. We got a lot done. Various people have promised to do pieces of the policy writing, and if you volunteer to do any of that, please take that seriously and get things back as fast as you can get it drafted. Okay. I don't remember where the street light stuff ends.
I'll salvage use whatever voice I have left. On the back of your package that's at your place, the staple package, you'll see a schedule. It's the first sheet. On the back of that sheet, there is a series of suggested streetlight data queries, and this is what I've heard from several people. Has anybody got any extra copies of the package?
I'm sorry, Don. Where did you say that is?
Okay, at your place, there should have been an agenda and a package that looks like this.
It starts with the schedule.
Yeah, schedule is the top sheet. On the back of the schedule, there's a list called suggested streetlight data queries. And what I did was I took what I had heard from the committee, notably from Bitsy about certain items of information that you'd like to know, and I coordinated with Jeff and Carol to see, they have gathered some data, and we came up with a list. I added a few to it, and I'll just go through those. On Main Street, there are actually 4 locations. I'm suggesting that we ask them to give us, at Main and Herf, their traffic volumes, turning movements, and the percent trucks. And that we also get an origin destination study done at that location, so we can see where trucks are going to and from. Then moving up Main Street to the north, at Main Street and Bandera Road, we would do traffic volumes, turning movements, and the percent trucks there as well. Same thing at Main Street and Blanco. And then at the other north end of town, going beyond Market Street, which is the last street to the north before you get to Interstate 10, that we do volumes, turning movements, percent trucks, and origin destination. And between those, the one at Main and Herf and the one at Main and Market, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what trucks are coming into town and delivering here, and what trucks are coming into town and through town. So that was the thought process there. Number 5, State Highway 46 and FM 3351. We've got TxDOT information on volumes. I think they probably have turning movements, but I think we'll go ahead and validate that. But we would also do an origin destination survey there, or analysis there, to see where those trucks that are at that intersection, where they're coming from and where they're going to. My English teacher just hit me over the head because I said, where they're going to. It's like saying, where are you at? Right, Zach? Number 6, Herf and Esser / River Road. We do volumes, turning movements, percent trucks, and origin destination there. Now, the city has done this. I think TxDOT's done this. But I think those studies have been one-day counts. Is that right, Jeff?
Sorry, excuse me, what was that?
The Herf and Esser, that's one-day count, right?
Correct.
And we thought that it would be good for us to just use this as a calibration, make sure that we're either confirm that or say we got a problem here. Now, one road we have not talked a lot about, but we thought we'd go ahead and get some turning movements and volumes there, is Johns Road. And we picked Lattimore, a road that comes into it there at the school. Another one is Old San Antonio Road at Industrial, which is a street that connects to the access road on I-10. And then there's a couple of them in Comfort, SH-27 and US 87. This is right there on the east side of town. And then SH-27 and RM-473, where we've talked about doing a roundabout in a few places. There's been a suggestion that we get one at SH-46 in Cordillera so that we can see how those people are, what percent of them are going east, what percent of them are going west. And another one is FM 289 at Joshua Springs Park entrance. We have a lot of trucks that come out of a quarry there, but we don't know how much is truck traffic, how much is park traffic, where it's coming from, so we thought that might be a good thing. And then we want to make sure that we cover some for Fair Oaks Ranch, Dietz Elkhorn, and Old San Antonio. There's a lot going to be going on in that intersection or in that area, and so I thought we'd get turning movements and origin destination.
Is that Dietz Elkhorn, Old San Antonio, or Dietz Elkhorn and Fredericksburg Road?
You were right, John. It's Old Fredericksburg Road. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So those are suggestions. If we have a limited number of, I think it's 100 stations is what the subscription pays for. One location can involve multiple stations, so I'm not sure we'd get all the way down the list, but that's the suggestions that we can get. Are there other suggestions or any that y'all are just not interested in, and we'll take them off?
I think the only suggestion, Mr. Chair, Ammon Road, I'm curious as to not where Ammon Road folks are going to. I'm curious to see who's cutting through Ammon Road. And I don't see any of these that, in looking at the origin destination, other than 46, 3351 and 46 Cordillera, would it help to see who's using Ammon by studying Ammon and 46?
No, I agree. That'd be something that'd be interesting to see how Fair Oaks is using that as the back entrance into Bernie.
So you would, Ammon Road, where would you?
Or Bernie folks using it to get out
Exactly.
to the east.
The 3351, yeah.
Where would you suggest we get that?
46 and Ammon Road.
46 and Ammon Road?
Plus there's 13. It's kind of like an unlucky number anyway, so.
Okay. We can add that to the list. Anything else? Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and forward this on to the county engineer, ask him to get with with the streetlight data people. Steve, they may be giving you a call you, Steve Sharman?
Oh, yeah.
If you have any suggestions
Yeah.
about
You
information.
usually have to do the data processing yourself. You watch some videos and you learn how to set it up. So if he wants some help, I
Yeah.
can surely help him.
We do.
Okay.
Okay, that's that agenda item.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. You got your voice through it. It's awesome. Okay, folks, we're going to resume what I consider to be one of our most productive sessions ever last time, and we're just going to pick up and carry on. We've got a lot of things yet to do, but we covered a lot of ground. So what we were doing, for those of you who weren't here, was considering them and either rejecting them on an afterthought, approving them as a short-term, approving them as a long-term, and assigning people if the one-page summary needed to be edited and approved, made clear, that made more relevant. Sometimes the crowdsourcing commentary really didn't quite get it said about what might be the problem or what might be a solution. So I don't know, do we have I don't guess we have a summary list for those that weren't here
We
about
do.
what we did get approved?
Well, you might mention the table of contents is right
We're
here.
supposed to start at number 36.
Yeah, 36 is the one that we,
Start here, number 36.
Okay. So back to your packet that has the schedule on the front and the meeting minutes second. The third is the crowdsourced data master combined, and it essentially is the table of contents to the colored sheets, the real thick part of your packet. And so from that, you can keep up with where we are and what the order of business is. Everything's done consistently. Northern continues to amaze that the table of contents mimics the packet perfectly.
It follows 16 to 11 and 36.
And we got down through, I know, we did 211 because that's the one I had for homework.
yeah.
So we're ready to, let's see, how far, what page is that?
It's at the bottom of like the fourth page.
34. Yeah, 34.
Bottom of the third.
That's 34.
That's your first, second,
Towards the middle of this.
No, it's,
Wait a minute. Here's 36, right?
it's that far into it.
Wow.
So, look at 211, 36, and 152. It should be-
Bob, are you counting the first column number or the second column?
I had myself organized. Bring this up, okay.
It should be.
Are y'all looking for the last thing?
211, bottom of the second page.
36 right there.
Yeah, okay, so here's the deal. The far left column is just the numerical count. It just starts at 1 and goes to whatever.
ID
The
36.
second number is on the individual colored photos, one-page summary sheets, there's a reference number in the lower right, and that corresponds to that number.
My question is, they threw out number 36, which column are you looking at?
36 is in this, it's, all right.
Reference ID number.
Good catch. Item 20, which is reference number 36.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's the hawk. I recommend we do that one.
Now, with that said,
I recommend we do that one.
if I have
Should have.
reference number 12, because of the interest of, the possible interest in members who were not here at the last meeting, we want to go back and pick those up.
That was on Ian's
Yeah,
for Jonas.
because Jonah is here and he might have insights from the family. That's a good one. So let's go back and do that. So item number 12, reference number 184.
It's back here. No, I think it's reference 12.
No, reference number 12
Oh.
14, reference 12.
Oh,
and number 14.
14. Sorry,
First.
12's too close together there. Item 14, reference number 12.
On that one, we said we was going to consider that later.
And now it's later because we wanted somebody who knew the family to at least be in the room. And we have a larger quorum of what we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, yeah, we've got a great quorum. So,
Twelve.
Reference ID 12.
12.
We're trying to get it on your screen.
Adler extension, obviously.
So, I mean, I guess I could start off with just a blanket statement about this one, which is it does cut through property that's in historic family land for my family. So I probably should recuse myself for a vote on this item. But I will just say that I have talked to the family. They're not interested in that road. They're actively, either there's already been a conservation easement put on some of that property, or they're in the process of getting one put there. And I would say sort of my general comments that I've said repeatedly about other greenfield roads is that I think being part of a thoroughfare planning process, should the family members in my family who do own, I have some uncles and relatives that own some of that property, should they decide to sell and develop, I would totally support the creation of a road through that area if the land is developed, but I'm not in support of doing that forcibly through eminent domain or some other kind of process. So that's sort of my general trying to be consistent about how I approach that with greenfield properties.
Okay, well, we appreciate it. We wanted to at least give you a chance to be heard. Can anybody offhand remember the number of the somewhat related one that went along the southern,
Reference number 16.
which is what,
18.
what part, what index order?
You're asking trick questions.
Sorry. Item 18.
It's 4 down the road.
Item 18 reference.
It's further down the road?
It's like the 4.
It
One that's
is
between
reference
Bigwood and
ID.
Esperance.
It's the numbers reference number 16 after where we were just looking. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages after the one we were looking at.
Item number 18.
That's item 18, reference 16.
This one I think we've talked about, and I don't know that it's feasible due to all the houses in Esperanza at this point. I mean, I do agree with the basic concept of using existing infrastructure and roads. And it does make a connection with a lot less new development, but it does, I think if we had an aerial photo there, it'd be hard to wind the road between the houses.
The suggestion itself also specifically references Cordova as a street name. It says add extension from Bentwood to Cordova. So Cordova is a private road that's owned and operated by the HOA. It's behind a gate. So I don't know if that HOA would ever approve that.
Was this actually a road or a child corridor to link the two neighborhoods for school?
A walking corridor, you're
A
saying?
walking.
No, this suggestion was local thoroughfare.
There has been discussion, though, about the possibility of roads that are designed for school relief and that maybe have a timed gate that only opens during school morning hours and evening hours to prevent it from becoming a full-time, alternative route.
So my notes did say we were going to postpone consideration of this until we looked at number 12. So we've looked at 12. Let's go back, let's put that one to rest one way or another. Is there a motion on item 12?
Well, I think what I heard Jonah say is technically, as long as major thoroughfare plan doesn't invoke eminent domain, you don't mind showing it on a major thoroughfare so that if ever does develop, the right-of-way would be reserved. So we could show it there as a long-term corridor, provided that we never pursue it as eminent domain.
Yeah, I think the same thing for some of the other quadrants
Right.
around the state or around the town is if it's going to develop anyway and houses are going to be there, we should find ways of making sure that there's connectivity through there. The thing that I would ask for with general Greenfield Road expansion projects is that we say in the comments that we strongly feel that the city should adhere to the process, because that's going to build a lot of trust within the community, right? Like, we're going to trust that this thoroughfare planning process doesn't mean that people's land is going to be taken and that these lines on this map aren't a hostile takeover of some kind, that these are for planning and we're going to adhere to the process. So I'd be the first one to say if a development goes there, a road should be there.
So would you need a motion, Mr. Chair? Or are you going to just vote on it, or?
We need to get clear understanding of what we're fixing to vote on.
I could
wording-
put that in form of a motion.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion of amended wording.
I would move we support establishing or supporting reference ID number 12, the project identified reference ID number 12, without supporting or us showing
Let me help you a little bit. You want to support it as a long-term project,
as a long-term project.
shown on the major thoroughfare plan.
That is correct. That's it. Long-term. I was going to add to state we're against eminent domain.
Exactly.
But if that's known on it being considered a long-term project, let's just move forward with voting.
No, I
for it as a
think
long-term.
that needs to be in there, and we need to note the family's current plans do not include anything that would warrant or cause this road to be built.
That was noted in the crowdsource tool, and I think that's why that's in the upper right-hand corner there. There's a little note about that
Is the policy against eminent domain in our policy recommendations?
It's being drafted, I don't know where they stand on that.
That's what we've been working on with Tim, but we didn't make a lot of progress at our last meeting. So I think we need to make sure we try to hammer it out.
I believe it is, but I'm not clear certain.
Yeah, I think having some kind of very clear statement about what we mean when we talk about, long-term planning, thoroughfare planning process and stuff. I think it helps to have redundancy in our planning too, have multiple different routes to go different ways. And as developments happen, some of them might come to be, some of them might not. But as long as we stick with that process, we might have a way of doing it in a way that doesn't, really tear apart the community like the Gateway study kind of did.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
What is the motion again?
Motion is to support the project on reference ID number 12 as a long-term project and to show our lack of support for proceeding to eminent domain.
Proceeding to eminent
To
domain.
any use of eminent domain, against any use of eminent domain to purchase the property, to acquire the property.
I don't think you want to do that.
Well, we have, in other meetings, we have been
Well, the reason
sitting
I
on a
say
project and
The
we're
reason
just
I
not
say
supporting
that
it, sir.
is you could have on the thoroughfare plan that we have, you could have it all complete except one gap. And that gap is going to never be developed. So to complete the thoroughfare plan, you may have to go in there on that short piece and use eminent domain. Otherwise, you'd never have a complete thoroughfare plan.
If I may respond, Mr. Chairman, I've been in that situation, sir, in my public sector work, and
I have too.
I am, as a volunteer of this committee and as a citizen of this committee, I'm just trying to support projects and get these projects going, and possibly get them to vote and get them approved so we can move on. I mean, if we put eminent domain in there and saying, let's go ahead and support eminent domain, if necessary, it ain't going to get approved. I really like this project. It's very important to the city, I think.
Well, I do too, but it could be someday it would have to be through eminent domain. I mean, you can find people that will go out and buy property and put it in a conservation easement to stop development, where you can never build a road through it. So, in other words, they're trying to hurt the city rather than help. So I would say this project needs to be one on the list for further consideration long-term, but I wouldn't rule out eminent domain.
Gary?
I'm not sure a specific comment in eminent domain should be applied to every project we talk about. If our policy addresses our position on eminent domain as it applies to an umbrella on all of our recommendations. So I'd be reluctant to have individual comments in and out regarding eminent domain as we look at different projects, 1 through 300 or whatever that number is. I think our overarching policy about eminent domain needs to be written and then applied to each one of these projects.
What I think I've heard from this conversation this time and last is, number one, we're only talking about the projects that involve Greenfield Road. So it's a new route that does not exist today. And secondly, was a comment about almost belt and suspenders. We're going to probably have a policy statement, apparently it's being worked on, that's going to express the will of this committee to be against eminent domain. But for those projects that are pretty clear on a map that it's going to require taking, I think I'm hearing a sense by some of the members of this committee, they want to put it in that as well. They just want to double down on the sense of this committee. And I want to remind everybody, we have no regulatory or legislative authority.
Yeah.
Our report, our deliverables are going to be our sense of what the people who live here and work here see as problems and see as potential solutions, and let them make those decisions ultimately about eminent domain. We couldn't stop them if we tried. It's kind of the bottom line on that. If we say we don't want any eminent domain ever to happen in Kendall County, all they got to do is act one time and say, yeah, there is. We're fixing to do it tonight, and off they go. So it's not like we are anything other than citizens advisors. So, John, I think the way to test it was in last meeting too, where we had there were people who said we can't put that down in writing. That's just a bad precedent. Other people said, yeah, we can, and we need to, and we will, and let's do it. You guys set up a governance structure a year and 2 years ago that I think we need to test on this wording. If we get consensus, it's a go. If we don't, it's not. I would like to have a test vote around just the inclusion of that phrase at the end of the motion, and see where the sense of putting specific eminent domain wishes of this committee in it or not. Let's just see how it goes.
Well, again, I've gone through this many times. I don't particularly like eminent domain. I would rather work with the people, which I've done. I've gone out. I've had right-of-way donated, which happens more than you think. And like I say, I'm not particularly interested in eminent domain, but there are times when you have to use it that it's just, it won't work without it. You're holding the whole city up for some one person that doesn't want to do something.
I think in this situation, the use of eminent domain to specifically relieve congestion in the neighborhood that it comes out of would be a misuse of it. I don't think it's an absolutely essential necessity. It's a convenience, but it's not a necessity. And it doesn't really generate any overall ease of transportation woes to come from Esperanza into Bentwood. It just eases traffic out on 46 coming out of Esperanza. It eases school traffic coming in and out of both of those neighborhoods. So if my vote would be, I think it's appropriate to use specifically eminent domain in this motion for that reason.
I think also it's important to recognize that the intent of this committee is to be the voice of the citizens in the town. And that's different than us being a political planning, authority or body. The voice of this committee could be, we really don't think eminent domain is the appropriate use for acquiring properties in this situation, or maybe specific properties, or maybe we have a blanket statement. That does not mean that the planners will follow that. And I think if they are in a situation where a road is developed and a tiny little piece is all that's holding up a big development project, that's ultimately going to be who the politicians, the decisions the politicians are going to have to make is say, okay, well, here's a situation where the need is clearly warrants the use. But I think when 500 people showed up at Commissioner's Court to talk about the Gateway study, it became clear that there was a pretty strong feeling in the community that style of and that feeling of a land grab kind of approach was not what the community was in support of. And so as a citizens representative group, I think making a statement would be appropriate. I would also recognize that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, that if politicians end up in a situation where it's necessary, then they'll have to make those decisions and deal with the consequences.
Mr. Chair, because in short, we're not judge and jury, we're just advisory. I mean, the city or county can do whatever they want. Not whatever they want, excuse me, but again, we're not tying their hands, Mr. Kite, at all.
But I think I'd go along with your motion as long as it doesn't tie down that you don't use eminent domain. This is a long-term deal, and by the time we get there someday, we don't know what they're going to do. So why do we want to, as a group, start specifying, well, this project, we don't want to ever have eminent domain, or this one we do, or this one we don't. I don't think that's our purpose here.
Let me offer some wording here that maybe will squeeze us through the knothole. I would suggest that we add this under committee recommendation, if applicable. The owner does not plan to develop this tract anytime in the near future. Nevertheless, the owner does not object to showing this as a long-term project that is part of a major thoroughfare plan, which implies the right-of-way not be acquired via eminent domain.
I can't speak for the owner. So I actually think I like everything you said there, but I personally am not the owner, and so I wouldn't want that to be put into the wording in that way without consulting the owner.
I was going to change my motion to that, Commissioner, but I guess not.
Yeah, sorry.
So how many properties, subdivisions around here right now, when I was commissioner, they were never going to do anything with that property. It was always going to be natural. What's the name of the subdivision out on Upper Balcones on the left there as you go out?
On Upper Balcones?
After you go over the hill on the right?
Miralomas?
No, that's on 46. Anyhow, so now it's a big subdivision, although they told me absolutely they would never destroy that beautiful land. And there's a couple of others that I can tell you about. So, again, I don't think we need to get in the position of saying that this one should never be eminent domain or this one. We should just say this is a long-term project and let the politicians and whoever's going to be the next 10 years or 15 years decide.
Well, where you and I kind of depart, John, is that I think we have a sense in the past that there has, because something was on a major thoroughfare plan, that made that section of road eligible to be acquired through eminent domain, rather than through as part of the development process. And when you apply that sort of rationale to existing developments, particularly large lot developments, that's when you generate this vehement opposition. And what we want to do is avoid that. And so that's how we word that to where how we word that is, I think, where we got to hold our knife.
In my opinion, anything that's on the thoroughfare plan right now, it's not subject to eminent domain. It's subject to the developer. If the land is sold and the developer wants to develop the land, well, he builds a road along generally where the thoroughfare plan is.
Right, and that was where I thought if we say that the owner doesn't object to showing it as part of the major thoroughfare plan, and then just reiterate, which implies that the city not pursue this through eminent domain, doesn't prohibit them or doesn't even recommend they not pursue it, just says it implies that because it's shown here doesn't mean we suggest you go out and get that property.
Yeah, and that's the way thoroughfare plans are supposed to work. They're supposed to work that the developer builds the streets.
Right.
And that as each development occurs, when it's all done, the streets are there. The city didn't have to build any of them. But
This road is already on the thoroughfare plan,
huh?
right? This road is already on the thoroughfare plan.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so, you know,
I don't think we need to say anything.
right. Like I think it's already on the thoroughfare plan. I think if it's developed in the thoroughfare planning process or you know, when the thoroughfare, you know, through that process, me personally, I think that's an appropriate way to approach it. But I don't know. I mean, Bob, maybe we're going to have to do what you suggested and just see, you know, somebody put forth a motion and see where the votes come down on it. But in general, to respond to what Bitsy said earlier, I do think it would be helpful when evaluating this and many of the other projects to have our eminent domain policy statement of some kind drafted so that we know what it means when we support a project like this. We're still doing the first pass, right? These aren't the final, or is this the final pass?
This can be final.
Okay, all right.
That's where we are now.
Yeah, okay, so I missed the last meeting, so. Yeah, I think having that policy statement drafted in some way where would make a very big difference for how I would vote when I see potential roads going through properties. It's night and day if 1,000 houses are going in there and we're just telling them you got to route a road to connect these 2 points to, like in the case of my family's land, it's been in the family since 1852, I believe. And to forcibly, take land in some way there couldn't be a bigger difference in the way I would feel about those 2 different approaches. So I think that statement needs to be clarified first.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think you raised, to me, a real important point is you're not the owner, and we can't speak on behalf of the owner because the owner hasn't been approached. We've said as a committee we weren't going to put lines on a recommendation, on a map of a recommendation, if that hadn't been done. So
He brings up too, though, we need to address this as a policy, what we're going to say, because we're going to have other projects that come up with this.
Oh, we are.
So-
I'm quite willing. If you guys want, we'll test the sense of the committee right now about it.
Here's what I think this is important because I think the opposite of eminent domain is what we need to support. Meaning we need to be supporting any other measure to obtain that property other than taking it. Does that make sense? Because that's what we've heard from the get-go, from the very beginning. But if we don't stop and do this right now, we're going to be spinning our wheels in 4 more projects or on 36 or whatever. 36 is actually the Hawks.
Well, what we have is a broader choice, is there is a policy being drafted, but it's not ready for prime
Right.
time, right? How strong that's worded, we don't know because we haven't seen it. So it leaves us now with a specific project in front of us where we need to address it. If we don't believe that the general policy wording is going to cover it emphatically to represent the will of the committee, then, yeah, we need to take the narrow approach on this one to test the language.
May I then revise my motion?
Sure.
I move to support the project in reference ID number 12 as a long-term project, and to support the procurement of said right-of-way other than through the use of eminent domain. Period. It kind of, it goes against Mr. Kite's, but it,
I mean, there might be
Does it really matter what we say here?
Probably
it's,
not.
it's our, it's our advice. It's our
Hopefully it does.
opinion.
I mean, another way to do that would just be the opposite way, Bobby. And again, I'm probably influencing more than I should, but I would just say, the committee supports that this line stay on the thoroughfare plan, and that if and when it be developed through the thoroughfare planning process.
And we are going to work on policy language reflecting.
As
eminent
part of the
domain.
motion, all of that?
No.
Now, what he said is good. We're looking, this is going to be developed through the typical thoroughfare plan development. In other words, the developers do it. So I think
So we're not talking about eminent domain. We're just saying that it would stay on the thoroughfare planning process, or it would stay on the thoroughfare plan and be developed as part of the thoroughfare planning process if and when development occurs on that site.
no, and just leave it alone. And 20 years from now, maybe there's 100 feet that's not developed. Well, maybe they do eminent domain on that. So just leave it like it is. Let it come up and be developed through the normal thoroughfare process.
I think that's going to apply to quite a few projects on the southwest side that we looked at in the subcommittee and discussed it as being a good choice. It seems like it's appropriate for the development that's coming.
Yeah. And that was some of the statements I made about that site as well, is that's a incredibly sensitive, beautiful part of the county that's worthy of protection. But it would be a shame if we tried to protect it by not building a road there and came back in 5 years and it's wall-to-wall houses and subdivisions. And so, so again, I think the same idea fits there as well, but I think it's all contingent on having that policy or something, clear that, that those are very different things between the thoroughfare planning process and, descending upon a property with bulldozers to build a road.
So then the motion could be, I move to support project and reference ID number 12 as a long-term project and as shown on the City of Bernie thoroughfare plan.
That's
Period.
great, I'd second that.
I would like to just add, personally, I'd feel more comfortable with it if it included something about through the thoroughfare planning process, or we believe that this should be
The
developed.
thoroughfare plan is part of that process. That's, the UDC refers to it. The plan refers to the UDC. So that's part of the process. I think we'd be convoluting by putting too much in it. That's part of the planning process, is that document that I'm referring to in the motion.
Yeah, I'd personally feel more comfortable if it was clear that we were not advocating for some additional road be developed in some other way. And so, and I would say that I'd feel that more comfortable about that in all cases.
I will keep my motion as said, because I see what you're saying,
I
Jonah,
think
but
you
it's
gave-
just too much. That's my motion, and if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. Or if I need to rescind it?
What you just said is your motion now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, can you repeat it?
I move to support the project in reference ID number 12 as a long-term project and as shown in the City of Bernie thoroughfare plan. That's simple.
Is there a second?
I seconded it.
Further discussion now?
I think that language misses a lot of what we just discussed. I think you said as a long-term project and as shown in the thoroughfare plan. Those are two separate things. The thoroughfare plan and a long-term project are two separate things, and so that and the way that's phrased, I would be pretty disappointed with.
We have been talking about the long-term plan being part of that. It's long-term because it's going to be part of the development process, period, if it's long-term. So that long-term covers that issue of, it's going to have to wait till the developers develop it.
Which is
That's
a
what we've been
thoroughfare
saying.
plan.
Yeah, and the thoroughfare plan already has steps, what you do to go through it, so,
Yeah.
we don't need to be adding a whole bunch of words to it.
I don't think it was a whole bunch of words to say it like we suggested just a few minutes ago, which was including this, or leaving this in the long-term or in the thoroughfare plan to be developed with the thoroughfare planning process if and when the property develops, or something along the line.
Okay, I'm going to offer something I wrote down so I can repeat it if necessary. The committee supports this project as a long-term project that is a part of the major thoroughfare plan, with the right-of-way to be dedicated in conjunction with the development of the tract.
Why do you need to say that? All you need to say, it's on the thoroughfare plan, and if it's on the thoroughfare plan, it has to be developed.
I amend my motion to that, sir. I amend my motion to that, those words.
So what does it say now?
The committee
Johnson.
supports this project as a long-term project that is a part of the major thoroughfare plan, with the right-of-way to be dedicated in conjunction with the development of that tract.
That's what a thoroughfare plan does,
That's
isn't
what
it?
I'm trying to say.
You're in favor of the motion then, right?
So if it does, it does. I think that will get it approved. That's my motion. That's all.
When you say a project's on the thoroughfare plan, it automatically has certain rules and regulations it's got to follow. We don't need to be saying all that stuff.
I agree with you, sir.
Okay, before we,
Well, the broader point, though, was that eminent domain would not be invoked in the meantime. And I don't know that that's explicitly stated in that regard.
That's why we were deferring to the policy that we were looking to you for, but that's separate than this issue. Correct?
Yes, it's not separate, but.
But it is
was-
it's part of it, but in order to make this decision, if we're making some kind of overall eminent domain policy, then that is what focuses on every project. Am I correct in saying that?
yeah, and I hope the sense of this conversation makes its way back to the people
Right.
struggling with that, because if the committee's going to end up depending heavily on our policy recommendation, then it really needs to be clear and strong and unambiguous. And
I do wonder if it might have some ambiguity in it. That's all I'm going to say on that one. We're still defining it, but I mean, Tam Van Wolf, I think would, be in line with Mr. Kite here, in that obviously he typically favors the reservation of eminent domain for potential use. And so I have a feeling there's going to be some.
Well, there's always going to be an ambiguity. We'd say if there's a little gap, well, a little gap to one person is a huge gap to another person. And so, we're going to have to live with some level of ambiguity here. You can't, at some point, it makes sense. Where that point is, we have to look at that specific case when you get there.
Ben, what you're saying is that you're meeting past this point in the future, and what you may say or not say may impact number 12.
I think that's well said.
You're worried about it. That's why I brought it up in the beginning. If we're going to make this decision, like you were saying earlier, we got to put it out on the table, because we can't answer this question without that being addressed. We either need to table this and move on and pull that project back out after that policy is established,
I think that's
or we need to say it right now. Does that make sense?
It seems like there might also be a way of saying it that is sort of becomes standard blanket language that's used for greenfield roads. And so if it was something like what Don suggested about in conjunction with when the landowner develops the property, or something along those lines, it's restating something that's already in the thoroughfare plan, yet it makes me and would make a lot of other landowners feel a lot more comfortable, so I don't think it does harm to restate it. And so if we did something like that, I think that would be helpful. Or we could do it through spending 10 committee meetings pulling each other's hair out over a terribly written by committee policy about eminent domain as well. So.
Well, I'll tell you the reason I've been okay with this lengthy discussion is because it's the template for the future, for the next projects. Whatever you guys get together on it that can get a consensus vote is going to apply. From my listening to you, I'm surprised that there's as much coalescing around this wording, because it doesn't bring up the term eminent domain whatsoever. It's totally silent on it because of the objections that are being raised. I personally was ready to do a test vote on that to see. You guys have a very strict governance you adopted. I said that earlier. Let me put some math to it. There are 11 voting members here today. If you recuse yourself, there's 12. If you recuse yourself, there's 11. To gain consensus, we're going to have 9.
Well, why, and I've asked this before, why is eminent domain even brought up? Because when you're talking about the thoroughfare plan, you're talking about a plan that is, property is being sold and developed, then, and the thoroughfare plan happens to run across that property, well then, there's already a process how to do it. There's no eminent domain involved.
John, I'll try to answer that, but I'm not advocating this. I'm just trying to reflect the sense of what we've heard from the public, what we've discussed here. I think the reasons people want to include our negative feeling around eminent domain is because the community feels very beset by that. It feels that there's been a lot of heavy-handed and backroom dealing where lines were drawn on a map rather willy-nilly, and just say, here's progress. We know what's right. You don't. And eminent domain is a key, one of the tools in our toolbox. So here we come. And I just think there's a real sense that that's even the people who, even you are saying it's really a bad idea to do it. But gosh, it's there as a last result. If there's a last little piece, I think that's the rub. People just have been burned by the whole conversation and by the appearance of heavy-handedness, and they want to come down hard on saying that's just a terrible idea.
Well, I think what we ought to do, rather than tying this down to project number 12, what we're talking about is anytime we run into a project that happens to be on the thoroughfare plan, we need to understand that there's development procedures, and you're talking about maybe adding that word in there. There's development procedures that you go through. And so for us to say, well, now project 12, we are to say so-and-so, no. Are we going to do that with every project? No. If it's a major thoroughfare, we're going to say it's going to be developed following the procedures of major thoroughfares on the thoroughfare plan. And we all, maybe people don't understand that the developer develops the road. They build the road. The city doesn't build it, or the county doesn't build it, but the developer does. And as each part is done, then you have a complete thoroughfare. You don't even get into eminent domain. So maybe we need to reword what we're saying is that any type projects, major thoroughfare projects, would be in compliance with major thoroughfare development process and leave it alone.
What's the sense of the committee? What do you want to table these for policy? Do you want to take a test vote on anything here?
My motion's on the table. I think we're an advisory committee. We're not the condemnation court. We're not judges in this,
You disagree with me?
so we're not the law. It's just our opinion.
I
We're
would
giving
suggest you go forward, Bob.
All right. Like to, yes.
We're killing a lot of time here. I think it's valuable that we examine it, but again, I go back to what I said early on, that we're going to have a policy regarding eminent domain that I believe applies to all our projects, even whether or not eminent domain or additional land is required. Even in refurbishing of some projects, you may need to get other property involved. So I think our eminent domain policy will apply. And I feel comfortable that we'll hash that out, and whatever happens with that will be applicable. Also, there are policies related to the planning process. I don't have a problem with being redundant. Anywhere you go in the governmental process, there's a lot of redundancy, and if we need to make a redundant statement in this particular motion, I'm okay with that. But sometimes we're just trying to kill the ants one by one. We're not really making any progress. I think we have a good motion. It's in the city's thoroughfare plan. There's a policy about how that's applied, so I'd call for the question. We have a motion on the table.
All right.
You might want to test first, just, if there's any objection. Nobody objects to it, then we're done. If there is an objection, then we'll vote.
Okay. Is there any?
Reread the motion first before you.
Yes.
I'm going to let whoever thinks they can read it accurately.
I amended it last time after Commissioner Don.
It's to adopt the project with this wording added to it. The committee supports this project as a long-term project that is a part of the major thoroughfare plan, with right-of-way to be dedicated in conjunction with the development of the tract.
That's good.
Okay, so what's been suggested is I just informally inquire, is there going to be any objection to that motion by anybody for any reason?
I don't think so.
So if we took a recorded vote.
Is that like
it
a
would be-
general second then?
Well,
It was seconded by Sean Kite.
Yeah, got it.
as long as there's no objection, we don't need to vote. We have a consensus.
I get it.
All right. One last chance. Any objection? Otherwise, we have consensus.
They had their chance.
I do have a suggestion, is that we make a list of these kinds of discussion tracks, and then once the policy comes out, I think it would need to go through a means test in a sense. Look at the track, is this appropriate enough for the intent that we have? That might be sort of the check and balance.
Yeah, I think we already used that same terminology on all of these that happen to be on the thoroughfare plan.
Yeah, because I think there's several that are going to come up
Yeah.
on the southwest side.
Don, do you think it would be appropriate to add by the owner at the very end of your statement? Because I think development happens by the owner. I mean, they may either sell it to a developer or someone who is then the owner. For some-
It's going to be whoever owns it at the time it's being developed.
Yeah.
So
Well, right.
it's private.
So if that's the case, I mean, to me, that, I don't know, maybe is that too redundant? Or,
You don't want to get too much stuff in here.
Your grandchildren will want to develop it.
it could be, yeah. Well, actually, it won't be because they're not going to ever own, that's a different side of the
I think
family.
that wording ought to be available to apply to a lot of these projects.
It's there. Anytime you want to use it.
All right.
Okay, let's go.
All right, so we have consensus on that wording on that item.
We'll put back and pick up 16 again and.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, why not? So the related one, several sheets down, was reference ID 16, which was the connection of Esperanza to Bentwood.
These things are not important.
What's the, the sensitive features commentary in the upper right talk about water quality control and staying 200 feet away from the creek bed for riparian purposes, eliminate non-native plants, and et cetera.
We're looking at reference ID 16.
Yes.
What is that other road that comes straight down perpendicular to 16 right there?
Charger, Charger, Champion.
The up top, north of 16, the one that comes straight down into 16. Is that a road?
Yeah, it's a street in
That's a
Bentwood.
private,
That's the gated one?
basically, everything in Esperanza is gated
Right.
except for the main collector road.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, my opinion of this project is it would, I've made this statement early on another project. It creates a lot of cut-through traffic from let's say in this case, people going from River Road to getting shoved through Esperanza, then through that private, whether they're private or not, it's another subdivision. When roads can function as a cut-through from one subdivision to another, I think there was another one that we referred to. That one made a lot of sense, but this one, I could just see folks getting off of River Road, going into Esperanza for the sole purpose of using that road to cut through one subdivision to get to another, to finally get to school. So to me, the proper flow of traffic would be to go along River Road, Esser, and to Bernie High School and vice versa. Yes, it is a shortcut for people trying to go from Esperanza to the school, but they're gonna, if Esperanza wants this project, they're gonna get a lot of other traffic from coming off of River Road to use that cut-through roadway.
Are the Bentwood kids they're not going to HERF, are they? Where's Rich at?
Not here.
He's
So the
doing his
Bentwood
school
kids-
bond stuff.
the Bentwood- yeah.
They do. So the Bentwood kids have to drive all the way out to 46 to Esperanza, to the back of Esperanza, just to get their kids to school. So
And
not just the high school, but HERF Elementary is the other question here.
That's just in today's school zones. I mean, in
Correct.
theory, when Esperanza is fully built out, Esperanza will go to HERF and other people will go elsewhere. But that's over time.
But didn't you say the streets in here are privately owned?
Correct.
So I don't know that, I mean, you might, it's a good idea maybe, but do we have the right to direct traffic to go through privately owned streets and neighborhoods?
I'd ask Jeff this question. If city council said, Jeff, this idea looks like it has merit, how can you make it happen? What would you do?
As the streets are owned within Esperanza or behind the gates, they're owned by the HOA. So it would take an act of the HOA to allow
So
approval.
you'd go meet with the HOA and ask them whether they'd be receptive to this idea.
Correct.
And you'd probably have a public hearing for the folks in Bentwood, right?
Correct.
To float it there.
Mhm.
And then as a result of those two meetings, you'd advise council, pursue this or not,
Correct.
as long as you were still alive.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen. And
I have
that's why I'm wondering why we,
Well, I mean, the only way I can see this going forward is as a suggestion for the city to study the feasibility of the idea. I think it makes sense from an easing traffic congestion, but politically and socially, I think it's
The mountain
tough
to
sell.
climb. Yeah.
So, and I would comment as well, I mean, we just spent a long time talking about the other project. This is basically a very similar project.
Yeah.
If the other project were to happen and Adler continued through to
So
Esperanza,
it would go to the north part of
and
Esperanza.
if the other part of our thoroughfare plan, they would extend Champion up and tease into Adler, Bentwood could connect to Champions, which connect to Adler, which could connect to
Right.
Esperanza. So that other project we've already talked about is the same solution that this project is. And I really like Jonah's words earlier about having multiple solutions, but these two are right next to each other. And I don't think both are needed. I think one or the other.
Yeah.
And the other one is easier in my mind.
I think there's a couple interesting things about this one interesting possibilities with it. One is, it seems like it would be really obvious to have a bike or walking connectivity in that area so that high school kids can bike to school. That'd just
Or
be
kids from
or-
Bentwood
Like
could
that.
walk to elementary school.
exactly.
Yeah.
Kids can walk. Parents can walk their kids. That really seems like it needs to happen. Even a road that connects through that has periodic open, it's open for certain time periods of the day for school traffic, but maybe closed to prevent it from becoming a full-time reroute or something if people are concerned about that. The other thing that was not suggested that is an interesting idea to me is that when I was looking at the aerial image, it is difficult to see how it does connect into Esperanza, but there could be a sort of threading the needle between two projects where it maybe connects to Esperanza where the other project does, and then just heads south and connects into Bentwood Drive instead of going all the way across. And so I kind of drew that on there, Jeff. But, if you kind of do that sort of thing. So I like the idea of having somebody. Wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So having somebody study that in more detail, like some kind of connectivity between there. I don't think as drawn it makes sense, and just as a normal road, there'd be drawbacks and problems with implementation of it.
I do have a comment about that. I think the distinct difference between the last project and this project is it connects up to a City of Bernie road. And it's not a greenfield project except for that small piece coming out of Esperanza. So this looks to be a somewhat passable alternative in order to avoid doing a greenfield road.
So I will comment, there's a landowner in between Bentwood and Esperanza, so it would be a greenfield road through a landowner.
In that part.
It's again, a short piece, but it's someone's property.
And I've heard that property is for sale.
It's been for sale for many years.
Yeah.
It's about 80% covered in floodplain.
But Brentwood is predominantly, it's all residential with the homes fronting Brentwood.
Bentwood.
I'm sorry. Bentwood. And I guess that's my issue is you're taking
It actually,
Esperanza-type traffic, which is not, homes don't front Esperanza. It's a different type of traffic, pushing it through a neighborhood that's all in your front door of a residential home. That's, to me, unsafe.
So what's the sense of the committee about this? Anybody want?
I would suggest that we make a motion for there to be some kind of further study into some form of
Connectivity.
connectivity there. at the end of Bentwood Drive, but I don't think making a motion to, move forward with this project makes sense. I think Bobby brings up some good points, but I think having either walking, biking, or intermittent
Yeah.
time, some sort of connectivity there could be worth investigating. And just from a cost standpoint, I mean, the amount of road covering ground is a lot smaller than the other project.
I would support walking and biking because if you go to the private subdivision, it's what's in it for them. Well, the recreation, they can get back that way, and they don't have Joe Q. citizen driving across, speeding through, trying to get to school.
Okay, so, but from an automobile perspective, which is what this is, I'm not hearing support from this committee, am I right?
I mean, I support
Correct.
I support some sort of investigation into
But
whether
but on
it's an option.
this project, narrowly asked, this project, does it have support or not?
Vehicular.
For vehicular connection.
Yeah, I think the location it connects into Esperanza Drive does not make sense right there.
I move we not include this project as a short or long-term project as vehicular access.
A second? No?
You don't want to make any caveats about allowing for, see, where do we stop defining a vehicle, like a bike, for example?
It's automobile.
So for not, would it make sense to actually say we favor it for non-automobile mobility? I mean,
I'd rather not amend my motion because what, does that open up a can of worms to other projects? We're not really, I love this as a bike and walking ban, but that's not our, we're supposed to be taking crowdsourcing.
We do have a
info.
bike and walking project
Can we
right here.
Can we refer this to the pedestrian committee?
sure.
I mean,
We could put it on the map. It's on there. We can put, if we put it on the map,
Okay, that's fine. We'll
keep
bring
my
it back-
motion.
We'll bring it back via that committee.
so we can,
Give a report.
Good point.
you can
Keep my
support,
motion.
keep your motion?
Yes, we don't support this project for motor vehicle traffic and as a short or long-term project.
All right, so what's the sense?
Motor vehicle,
Objections to that?
Could we amend it and say, and refer it to the,
and refer it to
Bike and
the
pedestrian.
bike and trail group. Yes, that's my
This is
amendment.
all provided that you can get an easement from the property owner across there.
But that's not our job to resolve that. I mean, so I think
it's recommendation.
we've discussed that on the subcommittee, Mr. Kite, and some of those, can we get an easement? Well, we don't know, but this makes good sense to look into it.
On the
With the
bicycle thoroughfare plan.
Yeah, with the amended wording, I second the motion.
Thank you. sir.
Okay, any objection to it?
Sure. I just want to add that I think
I'm not
I
amending my
think
motion.
throughout this committee's process, we've made it clear that we favor connectivity between neighborhoods, and what this is creating is two large dead-end neighborhoods that have no connectivity, yet are right next to each other. And so to me, I feel like, what's the harm in having a group or recommending that the city investigate the viability of a connection there? If it's not viable, they don't do it. But allow the openness for if there's some sort of way that it's figured out where, hey, this actually could work, this connects, the town, because really we're just talking about a big interconnected town instead of a bunch of cul-de-sac developments. And so,
I will commit on the subcommittee to look at those connectivity projects. I don't think Ben, would you agree? We haven't really pulled them out to look at that specifically. But I'll commit to looking at that by next 30 days, and we'll pick out those that aren't motor vehicle sense, don't make motor vehicle sense, but make pedestrian and bicycle sense. And we'll put them on that subcommittee plan.
I mean, I was specifically thinking that if there is a motor vehicle connection possibility there that we're just not seeing because we're looking at it from a pretty narrow little map, then I think we should allow the flexibility for that to be explored.
But the motion on the table, it does not.
Stands. Stands.
Okay,
Bob, you just asked if there was any objections, and that would be my objection.
okay, so then we'll just Let's have a show of hands. Anybody that supports this motion, raise your hand. Might be easier.
I mean, so let me get clear. So, Jonah, what I was hearing you saying is that maybe the city could go ahead and have this conversation. We want to recommend that.
I think that's what Jeff even said. Didn't you say something like that? Like they're,
Well, the actual way that it's written, I don't agree with.
Right.
But having Champion and Bentwood and Esperanza connected in some way by public roads, I do agree with.
Correct. And there's 3 other projects that have these
Correct.
connections
Yeah,
in there.
correct.
through public roads?
Through public
Or
roads.
do you just mean through bike trails and stuff?
No public road, there's a cut through.
So, yeah, there's separate suggestions for trails and pedestrian that I think we've talked about and I think we're okay with.
Is there another one that connects the Bentwood, Champion, and Esperanza?
So there's one that's number 121 that would extend Champion Boulevard to the extension of Adler.
Can you help me find number 121, please?
Sorry,
Can you help me find number 121?
it's on page, fourth page of the table of contents. Sorry, we couldn't get it at one screen today.
Sequence number 26.
Number 121.
Number 26, okay.
Yes,
121?
it says Champion Boulevard is the road name.
Okay, so this is similar to the one I just drew. Okay.
Technically, this one connects Champion Boulevard to the extension of Adler, but no one says you have to do that. I don't believe you just hook up with a thoroughfare through Esperanza.
There's also the next one, which is Champion Boulevard to Vista Verde and Hunters Creek, number 42.
Yeah.
The only thing about 121, it goes down the creek bed.
That's the next.
I think it could be designed to go on the east side of the creek bed there. There's a pretty big shelf of the land right there that's, but you're right, it does, the way it's drawn, they're showing it like right in the middle of the creek.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the road that's
Then there's
south
another
of
one
the
right
high
here.
school, kind of lines that go like Swanson.
And the city's talking about here.
But again, you'd have to get an easement for that.
That might be an easy easement to get if it's 80% floodplain and the landowner's been trying to sell it for a long time. Who knows?
Down here, but not up here. Because of this.
So maybe, Bobby, maybe there's a way to thread that needle and to say that that project we disagree with. However, we do think there should be some exploration of connectivity between Esperanza, Bentwood, and Champion Heights to link those 3 subdivisions together through some kind of connectivity.
Have we voted on the one that does show it a little better? I mean, it didn't, I've been looking for the one that shows that a little better. Maybe we just vote on that one and don't
Y'all
convolute
can
it.
modify these projects. This is the crowdsource thing. We can modify it, or y'all can modify it however you want.
We can combine several of these
Yeah.
into one and
Okay,
just convert with one stone.
Yes,
Say we want to connect
I see what you're saying.
these 2 locations and connect them, and then that will cover several crowdsourcing options that we can do.
And as you said that, I just found 121.
I don't think the people in the subdivision are gonna want connecting that down to the,
Is Champion Boulevard, is it City Street on the north side of the city?
It is a city street on the major thoroughfare plan, yes. It's drawn on our thoroughfare plan today. Champion goes all the way up to the Adler Road extension that we talked about earlier.
Ben, you started this. Give me a suggested revision to my motion.
Well, so, John's saying he doesn't think that the people, the homeowners or the communities want those connections, but I just think everything we've noted is that those connections would really help solve a lot of traffic congestion issues. And there's, the issue becomes that really everybody's NIMBY. Everybody's not in my backyard everywhere, right? And people say, well, not in my backyard, even though there's a connection that's supposed to kind of hypothetically bring those two together. But put it in that guy's backyard over there, we're going to take this large swath of land. Mm-hmm. And so it gets back to that value judgment dynamic, which is, well, not only, yeah, fine, we're all NIMBY, but also cost-benefit analysis. Like, you already have... like to Jonah's point, a very short stretch of space to solve significant problems potentially. And that's where it becomes the tough work for us to recommend one solution or another.
Connectivity
that offends somebody's NIMBY attitude.
Yeah.
Not in my backyard attitude.
But connectivity has been the one theme that we've had since the beginning of this workshop, other than not using eminent domain.
Yeah, let me
Connectivity
suggest
is
then,
important.
we've heard about combining some of these little things. I want to remind that, our BISD guy is not here today,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the congestion that would be relieved could be restricted to that couple of hours in the morning and the evening, not only for having kids, well, they could walk and bike, but from a vehicular standpoint, the improvement even from that comes from getting school buses off of 46 that are having to go deep into an Esperanza, come all the way out to 46 and go down a mile or so and go head off to the high school and do. So there was a whole lot of school reasons why, even if homeowners were somehow convinced to allow pedestrians and bicycles and for a couple of hours a school bus or cars just during school morning, school afternoon, it seems to be something that would be a conversation to at least hold. I mean, they're probably going to be against it, but if you want to try something,
fair enough. And I mean, so can we constrain this to, like we talked about, pedestrian, bike traffic, and school buses in particular, as an example? In other words, they could literally have a little clicker, opens the gate, they go through, press, move on. And yes, there's an inconvenience because there's going to be this period of the day where you hear vroom, all the bus comes through, vroom, it comes back. But, I don't know. When we're talking about multi-million dollars per mile of other road alternatives, you sit there and you go, really, what's the cost value justification for not doing this?
Jeff, the number 121 it would connect to Esperanza, like it would not go through one of the gated subdivisions. Gated subdivisions.
It would be the north end of Esperanza.
So would that require any HOA approval or anything to do 121?
So the Esperanza Development Agreement, the entire width of Esperanza, they're required to donate the Adler right away, but they don't have to build it. So the entire Esperanza development, it's in the DA that they have to give us right away for Adler through the project. So then that would be a public road.
So my,
When you extend Champion, which is a city road,
Correct.
to a future thoroughfare in Esperanza, and Esperanza will be a city road? Yes.
So if the project we looked at earlier, if Adler is extended through the one property, then it'll connect to Esperanza. Esperanza is donating all the right-of-way for Adler. The city gets to build it, but they're giving us the land, and that's a big piece, is just giving us
And
the
it
property.
connects to Esperanza Boulevard?
And it'll connect to Esperanza Boulevard. So it'd be a public road connecting to a public road.
Then you send Bentwood to the new extension of Champion, put a gate on it, that would only allow us bus traffic, would that solve everything?
Probably not. I'm sure everybody would be furious for whatever reason, but generally, if you've made everybody mad, you're kind of right between.
I think we ought to connect them all and just make all of them equally mad.
the Adler extension was 12. All right. To get it going then, I think you have to address projects 12, 16, 42, and 121
Together.
Yeah. I move that we support a motor vehicle, I move we support a roadway connecting the future extension of Adler to Esperanza and/or Champion Drive and any other public right-of-way, yet focusing on immediate pedestrian and bicycle access in the area, or focusing on pedestrian bicycle access in the immediate area, period. Would you all support that? Do I have to say it again? I move we support a project that incorporates project ID number 12, 16, 42, and 121 that focuses on motor vehicle access between Adler, Esperanza, and Champion, yet prioritizes pedestrian and bicycle access in the immediate area.
So the only comment I would make is if a developer were to build any new road, it would include sidewalks. So the fact that you're saying that it's automotive only, I mean, the road we build would have sidewalks on it, so it would be.
That's fine. Well,
multimodal.
I get it. So, but I didn't say automotive only. I said automotive with what I'm trying to say is, what my motion was is, don't push a roadway into a private road. That's what my motion said.
Yeah.
Bobby, would it help to phrase it sort of like project 16, 44, 20, whatever those numbers were,
12,
21,
16,
21,
42, and 121.
that as a group that we support exploration of connectivity in this area. of
It
some
would help
kind.
if you gave me the wording that you would prefer, maybe.
Well, that's what I thought that's what I was just saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's,
Yeah. So we support exploration of connectivity between this area that prioritizes pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. And what are the roads that you said you wanted to connect? Like, we could just list off the roads, but that way we don't have to say any one of these is the one that we want, and they are and we can kind of still leave the details up to the future policymakers.
I thought that my motion said that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to focus on those three roads. Because
Bentwood Drive, Champion Heights, and
those make sense. The type of traffic that goes through those three roads is common to each other. I didn't name any residential type roads.
You originally said Adler.
Adler, it's not residential.
it is actually residential.
It is.
But the houses front Adler, I guess?
Yeah.
Well, there's a few.
Well, but in that area.
If you counted them, there's probably 20.
I guess what I'm confused is so far, none of these projects that I've looked at actually connect to Adler, other than, 12 doesn't even.
They create.
Well,
They have the same issue.
Champion to Adler Jr. connects to Esperanza Boulevard, the north of Esperanza. That's why that was said, correct? And then we had Bentwood, which we left out, and Champion and Esperanza, all of those neighborhoods being connected. Pedestrian, bike, automobile, connect them. Period.
I rescind my motion so that Commissioner Bryce can.
Not a commissioner, city council member.
Council member. I'm sorry, you have to try to be proper.
Unpaid. So do we want to name project numbers in this? Okay.
Personally, I would not worry about that. I think we skip that in other ones. And we just have focused on the connection overall.
Yes.
The overall idea.
Yes.
So I was trying to address those folks that
made those comments.
Correct.
About those.
So how we move that forward is that the sense of the committee is we want to move that conglomeration recommendation forward.
Yes, sir.
We just simply need a volunteer to work on this one sheet and get the wording right for formal approval next meeting, next week.
The comment numbers worry about the overall idea.
That's about your volunteer?
All coordinated,
All
yes.
right.
You need.
Thank you. Yes.
You need help. Yeah.
And Jonah. I will coordinate with both of you,
Just kill four
whether you
projects.
want it or not.
Yay. We made more progress in that last 30 seconds.
We're trying.
It's 3:32. Could I have a show of hands in the audience of people who want to speak at the second citizen comment opportunity? Wanda?
Don Fraser, sort of.
Okay, we'll try to wrap up our work roughly at 10 till, something like that, to leave time for that.
And
Okay.
I have to apologize. I have to step away for a work call, and if I can get back in here, I will. But it's supposed to be 15 or 20 minutes. I apologize because we're getting into the good stuff. I'm doing good work, slowing things down for you guys. So,
We'll appoint you to something while you're gone.
somebody else take the mantle while I'm gone.
approved.
The Adler extension will occur here in the next 5 minutes.
Ready, hurry, he's gone.
Hurry.
Let's make fun of the bureaucrat.
Okay, God, I'm
Still listening.
I'm just playing. He doesn't.
Don, where were we?
I think we're now to 36.
Getting out of hand.
Okay.
Finally?
ID numbers of 36.
Been taken care of.
Correct. It's done.
So we're going
This
to
is
just
the hall.
eliminate it from any further discussion.
Why didn't
Wow,
we start
weird.
with that one?
We're good.
Thank you, Hawk.
We're slow. We're not
Well,
good.
that's good.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, deliberate's good.
So on to 152.
That's what I have. This one. Unless somebody has a different.
This is the road diet for Blanco.
Correct.
Done? No, not done.
We still have a committee that's out there. But
We have a committee, the Hawk was step one.
for traffic calming, and I think we kind of paused because even restriping a road is really expensive. And that road just got resurfaced, and we probably should have made that decision before it was resurfaced.
Correct.
Okay,
But
I hear you.
it still can be a recommendation from the committee.
Absolutely can. That's what I'm just fixing to remind everybody.
The other part I would add is for those that are following TxDOT gossip, is TxDOT has come out statewide and is against road diets right now.
Oh, sweet.
So
So we could
we
just
could
take a
still-
stand.
we could still try to work this, but TxDOT current policy would not be
Are
different.
they following the governor's lead on the whole Broadway issue? Is that the deal?
Correct. That's
Yes.
the
Of
broad-
course, they also have a policy that they want to reduce pedestrian fatalities and injuries.
Correct, which is why we had this discussion in the first place.
So I've since this new guidance has come out in the last couple of months, I've spoken with TxDOT about
Yeah, I-
Blanco Road
Multiple
in particular,
conversations.
and they've basically said we should probably just wait a year or two before we have that conversation again.
Well,
So,
so we'll just recommend it and.
yes,
and,
we could still recommend it, but it'll,
Policies change,
correct.
winds change with elections.
chairmans of TxDOT change.
Okay, well, the committee recommendation on this one said would be flashing yellow lights, facing both directions, keypads on either side for pedestrian safety. The one at the old number 9, the Hawk, works really well. I don't know if anyone's seen the video of, in Australia, they make the same weird noise that one does, but even more so, and it has a rhythm to it. And so a guy recorded it and put a band to it. It's a musical score in Australia. Because if you haven't heard the sound of the light at Old Number 9 in Blanco, it's quite a treat. There's nothing subtle about it. I've never heard anything like it in my life.
Is that why they call it the Hawk?
I don't know why. Somebody read up what a hawk meant.
The Hawk's an acronym.
It's an acronym, HIGH, trying to remember what
So anyway, are we wanting to move this forward? Is that the sense of the committee, to calm down Blanco Road?
I say yes.
Yes.
I say yes.
Short, long,
Am I writing this one too? I talked too much this meeting. I'm never talking again.
What do y'all want to do with this?
road diet. Blanco.
Or we would need to write language for this?
We'll need to clean it up, but
Okay.
Future.
But it sounded like it was long-term, is the tea leaves you were reading, so is that what we want to put this in, that long-term, or stick with the short-term recommendation?
Well, I just say future consideration.
That covers both of them. I agree.
Okay, so we're going to adopt this. Is that, any objection to this? Done. And yes, Bryce, you can clean up the word.
Got it. Making notes. Bless you.
124.
Bernie Stage.
Bernie Stage Road.
Is that
And
Corley
Act
Farms?
of WCID number 3, once it achieves critical mass, once it achieves critical mass in 5 years, will make Bernie Stage Road highly congested.
Yeah, we need to include this. This is one of the interim recommendations. A lot of that work will be done by
The developer.
the developer, but the county's going to need to step up and do the rest of it from the missing links there on the north and south end.
Any objection? So be it.
I'll work on that, getting that updated.
$105. Extension of Caulk Lane, Caulk.
We spoke about this one, and what, these are both public? Is that correct, Jeff?
I'm trying to find this one right now.
It's off of Johns Road.
Was that the one where there's a gate there and already a road?
No, there's a turnaround cul-de-sac. And
There was a
the
concrete
it didn't tie Caulk Lane into this other street.
That's what it was.
Oh, okay, so there's a cul-de-sac, there's a big drainage ditch so we
Yeah.
need a big drainage culvert to be able to connect two cul-de-sacs.
Right.
Okay, I remember that. All right, what was the question? Sorry, now that I know where we're at. Yes, it's two public streets.
Two public streets.
They need to be connected.
Then you could probably eliminate cul-de-sacs then.
Correct.
Well, I want to ask the question, is there a congestion problem at either end of, at Cibolo Crossing or at Caulk Lane to the south?
So I think this one was really about connecting to Bernie Middle School and Faber Elementary School. Both of these neighborhoods have to go in opposite
Come around.
directions to make a U to get their kids over there. And I think that was the conversation, and maybe, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jonah spoke about that in terms of walking paths for these kids to get on and over to Johns Road. The subcommittee recommended a middle turn lane in Johns Road to help facilitate some of the traffic in and out of the school area. And this was seen as another way to generate a little bit of relief, even though West San Antonio is not a totally heavily trafficked road. It is pretty busy, as is Johns.
So I don't think we have any traffic congestion issues on Caulk and, I just forgot the name on the other side, but I see this as a third, like to get from Johns Road to West San Antonio. Right now, there's Old San Antonio and Lattimore, and this would kind of split the difference between West San Antonio, between
Yeah, it
schools.
connects to Cibolo Crossing.
Yeah.
And the work type in the purple highlight is connectivity, it's not congestion relief.
Yeah.
And Caulk's the one with the senior apartments
the
right there?
senior
off of
apartments,
it? Okay.
Yeah, that's that little loop to the left.
But
The
the issue would,
Well,
you would
also,
think
this
would
is
be,
this is a way around Cibolo at School Street. Because this won't be flooded. So, and it's a way for the kids to walk from that area down there up to Johns Road and go over to the school.
Yeah, I would suggest we consider acting on this as a short term.
Well, I think it's.
for walking or for walking and for driving, for motor vehicles?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good project.
Easy connection.
And there wouldn't be any reason for anybody to cut through, just to cut through, to shortcut from Johns to West San Antonio. I'm thinking of cut-through issues.
Well, one of the things it does, I mean, it is essentially going to be a cut-through, but it routes traffic off of Johns Road and I-10, into another alternative route away from the schools. So in a sense, it does function that way. And what I've understood from conversations with folks around town, the traffic through school and Johns, with all the kids coming in and out, is pretty perilous at times, pretty confusing.
Okay, any objection to adopting this one? Short term? Okay, done. Okay, it's almost 3:45. Let's see if we can, let's start taking these one at a time, see how far we get. Reference item 44.
That one's being pursued already.
Oh, yeah, that was on a short-term recommendation. This is redundant.
Check that one off.
Yay.
Same thing.
194 redundant.
194 is the same.
121, we talked about it already. We voted on it, I guess. We're working
Yeah.
on something.
Look at
And
this.
42.
Okay, 101.
City's already taken care of
City Park Road, reduce the speed as an operational, speed bumps needed. High school traffic frequently travels at high speeds here.
It's an enforcement issue. I mean,
We're also building a sidewalk there,
Correct.
which is going to help with safety concerns. I
Along the,
understand what the sentiment was on speeding on that area, but we will have,
So we're under design now for a sidewalk there that'll connect the soccer fields parking lot to the
other side where the
Sidewalk on
fairground
Charger.
is, and walk all the way around to the high school.
our
Okay, with the crowdsourcing suggestion talked about speed bumps. I think they meant speed
Right.
humps.
No.
So I guess as written, that's sort of what's in front of us. Do we want to move that forward?
opponent of speed humps.
Huh?
So I'm an opponent
I
of
don't-
speed humps.
Well, I'm not.
Well, for your neighborhood, we discussed that, but here, I'm not for it, just because I've heard from our firefighters and our police officers and ambulance drivers. And this area, there's not a lot of homes off of that area. So if they're going down there, they're going down there for a reason, to go to Cibolo Nature Center or get to the high school quickly. I would not like to see speed bumps or speed humps on this road. That's my recommendation.
Sense of the committee to not move this forward?
I'm just kind of curious.
101.
Jeff, tell me again, the sidewalk is going to connect the soccer fields, which are on the other side of Park Road, to the fair side, so that you can travel up Park Road and over to the high school?
So for whatever, there's several miscellaneous reasons. There's a big group of high school students that park at City Park and walk over to the high school every day.
Should
And
we,
they want their car searched.
should we add something like a hawk to that area
Well,
to help pedestrian traffic, or?
you have a large area of parkland on both sides of the street there. One of them is Herb Park and the other one is the Bernie City Park. And I think it would probably, it would prevent any further coordinated development if you do anything to make that road a more of a vehicular thoroughfare. If you can make it more of a park road, maybe add some traffic calming devices and make it down. Or put it,
So that would be, there's many sorts of traffic calming devices besides speed bumps. So, yeah, city staff, and for all the reasons Bryce said, we don't like speed bumps, but there are many other traffic calming devices that can be investigated.
you can neck it down, you can put a cul-de-sac, mid-block cul-de-sac, a mid-block roundabout, anything you can do to slow that down.
Anybody wants history on speed humps, I've got plenty of.
So is the recommendation to look at other traffic calming alternatives in
think so.
consideration of the addition of a pedestrian facility, essentially?
Keeping it safe.
Narrowing
Yes.
chicanes.
Traffic calming, not speed bumps.
Go for it, Bobby.
A motion? Sure, I can,
To accept it with changed wording, instead of speed bumps, traffic calming.
To
Look at other solutions.
support the investigation of other traffic calming devices, not to include speed humps.
You can't say that. They work.
See?
John said use
unless you're
spikes.
trying
There's
to
so many
give somebody
cities that have
an
put them
IV
in
as
and
you go down
have
the street.
pulled them out.
They're supposed to be made where they can straddle, by the way. Fire trucks are supposed to just go right over them.
So I'm gonna,
Break the
yeah,
windshield.
I'm just gonna say again, though, if you're developing
expensive
more
to go down
pedestrian-friendly activities there, then maybe we address the safety of the pedestrians with
Yeah.
respect, like that hawk, you know, or I don't know what else, but in addition to your traffic calming.
Okay, so somebody's taking that on. Clean up the wording. Was that you, Bobby?
Don Harrison's hand as well.
Who?
Don Harrison.
Your co-chair.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a pause here and pick this up next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Everybody remember that, next week. Thank you, everybody. What seemed to start slow really picked up.
Did you notice Jonah left the room and
Those were important conversations.
Oh, you're right.
Necessary banter.
I'm doing this.
Yes. I was gonna put the agenda in there.
That's what I did too this time, and it worked.
Yeah, I was gonna do that. Wasn't here yesterday, last time, so
That's
that's
why
why.
it went so fast.
Okay. With that, our
Trying to get some motions going.
agenda, the next item is the second opportunity for public comment. So, Wanda, you want to speak?
Can you hear me? My name's Wanda McCarthy, Allen Road. As a landowner being under a line of various maps for many, many years, and in reference to a comment that Jeff Carroll stated, it seems that homeowners association has a little more say, or maybe a lot more say, to this process for a line on the map, even over existing roads, than private landowners having lines drawn over their own property and that they are stewarding privately. By leaving these lines on private property, whether on the Evans property or mine or whoever's, you have further held these properties hostage for resale for future and private use. Because you are all well aware that TxDOT and Bernie are already marking these roads as what they want, and they want what they want. They have already damaged the saleability of these lands, and you keeping it on your maps just emboldens them further. For instance, we keep asking Mr. Carroll, is this already on the thoroughfare plan? So in other words, we're basically reaffirming what they already have. Another note, Mr. Kite references the development process as a means to acquire roads, and I say that's a joke. I reference the Herf Road, the Herf Ranch development that originally had the city map on it for the thoroughfare plan, and when it was developed, the deals were made with the bureaucrats that be, and it was pushed to the Peter Herf property. When the Peter Herf property was developed, it was then pushed down the road to my property. So that process did not work, and saying it over and over and over in these chambers doesn't make that work any better. It was pushed to private land, open green space land. And I further reference TxDOT after a 3-1 vote at the Gateway when thousands of people from this community came and said no to this looping process. Their employee came and spoke to the Southeast Quadrant landowners, not one being a high-density developer, and said, you people have your head buried in the soil if you think you've stopped this loop. So that doesn't provide a whole lot of trust to this process or the existing maps on city and state websites. So again, having Mr. Kite talking about perspectives that we shouldn't worry about eminent domain but then turning around and saying, we can't limit the use of eminent domain. Can he have it both ways? I say no. And guess what? We do, in fact, understand this process. Coincidentally, Mr. Cricht greeted me about 5 years ago before the gateway process. Hey, there's that other not on my backyard person. And he's right. Like Mr. Ben Eldrin said, I am one of those, but I am not so selfish and such a jerk to think that I want to push that on somebody else. I'm concerned about the whole county. I want to do what's right for the entire process, not just, hey, let's fund this developer's big pockets and work on this person's power hungry. I care about the whole thing and the preserving the land and everybody's quality of life. And I differ from Mr. Cricht, the idea of which of preserving land is a detriment to doing what's right for the city, because I believe preserving land is a good thing. The idea of preserving land, whether it be private ownership or through organizational ownership like Cibolo Nature, the Friends of Cibolo, in my opinion, is worthwhile. And those lands, because they are not developed, should not be the automatic scapegoat to further enhance and encourage more high development and add money to their pockets, whether it's by deals behind back doors or other means. Those that are stewarding, preserving, and caring for land, again, regardless of style of ownership, privately, through nature conservancies, through organizations, and on. One hand, applauded by the hill country as the right thing to do with low and minimal impact, and then turned around and being targeted for these greenfield roads. The city and TxDOT are the direct benefit of the high-density developers and approved piece by piece and segment by segment in this process. So if all you're going to do is serve up to TxDOT and the city of Boerne their existing plan, segments, again, piece by piece, it seems like you have spent a lot of time, almost 3 years, to give them what they already want to plan and what they plan to move forward with. Hence the public's lack of trust and their very, very real concern. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think Mr. Edelstein is on the line on the Zoom call. Is that your hand raised, Tom?
It is, Don. Can you all hear me?
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Thank you. Just a brief comment. I'd like to go back to, I asked you all to reconsider item 105, the connection road between Calk and Cibolo Crossing. I don't know how many folks are really familiar with that area. It's a beautiful retirement community for elderly and disabled folks at Park Meadows there that is right on that road. There's also horse property on there, small horse property areas. I do not live there. I'm not asking that for myself. I deliver meals there, and it's just a gorgeous place to retire. I question whether there is a congestion problem that this would help on Johns Road, getting people off school. I would hate to see it become a raceway in front of Park Meadows on Calk. It's just a small road, but it is a peaceful place to retire for these folks. And I think it's a quality of life, and I really would ask you how much congestion you're going to be saving there or going to be improving for the quality of these folks' life. So I'm asking you to reconsider 105. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Tom. Denise Deaver, you've got your hand up too?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just got one request. I've had to bother city staff the last couple of meetings to get the information for the Zoom meeting. Can we please get that put on the agenda?
Let me ask a question. Is that something we know ahead of time? Who knows that information?
I spoke with Denise earlier today. I had a request from Chris Shadrock in our communications department, just ask if we could make that concession. I wasn't sure if it was for moving forward or if it was just for today. So just something y'all can talk about and decide. Just let us know.
We'll try to get that published as part of the agenda, Ms. Deaver.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And Erica, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
Okay. There's no other interest out there? Let's see everybody. Okay. All right. Well, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for their hard work. We'll see you in 7 days.